Okay, well, today's information vlog is about naturalization, what it is, what it means, and it's something I know a lot about because I went through it myself. I guess it's about 15 years ago now when I completed the process, or so. I can't remember exactly, but what does it mean? Naturalization means becoming a citizen of another country, acquiring citizenship, and that's what I did in Japan. I talked a little bit about it in my video about visas, but I want to go into a little bit more detail. I used to write about this a lot, probably close to 20 years ago, and I used to actually blog about it for different sites that no longer exist. One of them, which was called escapeartist.com, and a lot of that stuff I wrote has since disappeared from the internet. But I put it up in some of the old articles I wrote. I put up in Blogger, in Google's free blog site, Blogger, and so you can look at that if you want. But anyway, what is naturalization? Who can do it? Well, one of the reasons I mentioned before, one of the reasons I decided to go through with it, besides the fact that I realized it was a serious step, but it was suggested to me by someone at immigration because they saw that I wanted to stay in Japan permanently. And I looked it up and I saw that I met the criteria. The criteria being that you have lived in Japan for 5 years consecutively, and that's the main thing. The other thing is that you speak and read and write and can understand Japanese to a certain level. Now, I'm not going to repeat. Well, I'll repeat. I'll say. Now, everybody says to a third grade level in terms of what a Japanese, I guess, native speaker would be able to do as a third grader in elementary school. Now, if you've ever been to elementary school in any place in the world, third graders are pretty sharp. I think I was pretty sharp when I was in third grade. So that means absolutely nothing. In other words, that's what I'm trying to say. It means absolutely nothing, that requirement. It's going to be case by case. Every person every caseworker in the naturalization office, I'm going to call it, is going to be different. The way they talk is going to be different. The way what they are willing to accept is going to be different. So it's going to be case by case. You're just going to have to meet the expectations of whatever caseworker you get when you go in that office, and that's just the way it is. It's going to be case by case. And what also is going to be case by case is the paperwork they ask you to produce. Like in my case, because I wasn't married to a Japanese person, I was married to a foreigner like myself. There's different information required. Some of it will be the same for everybody, but there's going to be different things. And one thing is that as I was not, as I said, married to a Japanese national, the effect that has is that my partner, my wife, was not as involved, or really so involved in my naturalization process. Now, if I were married to a Japanese person, my partner would be highly involved in it, and would factor into even my eligibility in terms of how long it would take me to get it. Because I think if you're married to a Japanese person, you're actually eligible faster than the 5 years. You can even do it, I think, in 3, but to check on that. So, there's naturalization process. It will be different for everybody. And I stopped really I used to answer questions online. People would send me emails because my email address was on these old vlogs I used to do, or blogs I used to do. I used to answer lots and lots of questions about living in Japan, about naturalization. You got some trolls, very few trolls, but there were some trolls out there even back then. But yeah, I tried to help as many people as I could. I stopped after a while, and then later I met Inoue Edo, and I started to do some articles and some writing for his blog on Blogger, Turning Japanese, and that was nice. It was nice to hook up with that crew. Quite a few good people in that group, and I haven't done that in a while either. But I have some information on his blog as well. You can take a look at that if you're interested. Turning Japanese by Inoue Edo. So, and he goes through things quite thoroughly, in detail. A lot of the information is always changing, but I think the core of the naturalization process has not changed. So the things we've written in those blogs are still very accurate, I think. And what I've just said is still accurate. What are the main factors that you're gonna basically with any country? They want to know that you're adjusted to living here. It doesn't mean that you have to be knowledgeable. It's not like the U.S. Citizenship test I heard where they test your knowledge of U.S. government policy. They don't do any of that. So that's not the issue. The issue is being functional in the language, being able to take care of yourself financially. That's really what the issue is. And they check it. They check everything. They check your lifestyle here in Japan. They check your places of employment. They check your neighbors. Check with your neighbors. They ask around and they research. And then these are the local officials. And then everything you submit, all the paperwork you have to submit about your family background, your history, all that stuff gets sent to Tokyo, where they go over it and then determine whether you'll be accepted or not. My whole process took me like a year to get all the paperwork together from the time I went in there and translate it into Japanese and stuff. And then it took like another 10 or 11 months before I got my approval call. It came by phone. I called my cell phone, the caseworker. So, but for them, they don't count the time. They don't count the time that for them the process takes from the time that you submitted the form to the time they approve or not approve it. But they count. That's how they count it. They don't count it from the time you first walk in there. So, and the way the paperwork looks, and then once you get the citizenship, once you're naturalized, you get a document. There's a ceremony. It's a private ceremony. There was nobody else there. It was just me and another official and a couple of officials, and they gave me this document, and then I took this document around so I can get my official Japanese paperwork, my papers, there's lots of paperwork that you get, and you could say, what do you call it? There's lots of documents or official records that they have in Japan that don't exist in other countries. I think maybe in other countries, maybe in some countries they do, but I imagine they have the same type of stuff in China or in Korea. But there's something called record of citizenship document that everybody gets who's Japanese, and you don't get one of those until you are recognized as a citizen. So when I had foreign status, I had papers like it, but it was foreign style papers. I think that makes any sense. But so you get all the paperwork, you get everything. Official citizenship related documents, helps you get recognized in your local government office as a citizen, and it changes everything. I mean, the kind of paperwork you get changes. You're looked at just as a regular citizen. There's no difference between you and anybody else in terms of citizenship once you've been approved. And so yeah, you go on from there. I did it for the main reason was so I could settle down properly, because I wanted to stay here and I love my life here, and I wanted to settle down properly. And to do that, I felt being a citizen would be optimal. And also, I had at the time 2 very young children, and I wanted them to. One of them was in kindergarten. I wanted him when he went to elementary school. Before he went to elementary school, and unfortunately, it all went through before he started elementary school, and he was still in kindergarten even. I wanted him to go through school as a citizen, and I had a few other children born, and I wanted them to be recognized as citizens as early as possible. And so yeah, of my children, only one was born Japanese, because I was a citizen. I had been a citizen for some years, and when he was born, my youngest child, when he was born Japanese citizen, unlike my other 4 kids, which all naturalized, even though one naturalized as an infant, actually, which I thought was funny. But anyway, part of that whole thing is because Japan is not citizenship by birth country, so it's citizenship based on citizenship, basically, or you could say citizenship by blood. That's another way. So, I mean. And it facilitated a lot of things. Becoming a citizen facilitated lots of things. I mean, some of them are practical, some of them are kind of psychological. Some of them are related to how you fit into your community. I mean, whether or not, if you're someone like me, you're always going to be a foreign person, but you don't have to be foreign. You know what I'm saying? So, you could, but once I did that, it really also changed people's perception of me in my own community, where I've been living now for over 18 years. So, it means something, because you're not, people know you're not, you're trying to make roots, you're not transient kind of thing. And the advantages, there are advantages. It's been widely talked about. I just say a few. You can do things on your own. When you're trying to, if you want to finance, okay, let's just talk about finance. You want to finance something, a car, a house, new or used. You being a citizen is helpful. It's not necessary. But you do have to be at least a permanent resident to do certain financial things in terms of financing. At least a permanent resident. And I already mentioned how hard it is to get that. That's hard to get permanent residence. especially when you're just here through work. It's hard to get. It used to be really hard to get. It's easier now, I think. And now they have schemes for highly skilled people where they get it pretty quick, but it wasn't like that before. And depending on what category you fall into, all right, if you're on a highly skilled work visa, then maybe permanent residence is for you. It's fast, it's easier to get. Although don't think that naturalization is impossible. It's not impossible. It's not extremely hard. It does take some effort and there's paperwork, but it is a process that's very defined, and there's step-by-step procedures that they walk you through, and there's someone there to help you from the government. So, don't be put off by that, by people saying how hard you have to be somebody famous or some athlete. So that's not true. It's not true. And you don't have to be some type of native speaker of Japanese, or you don't even have to be what I would consider to be a perfect Japanese speaker. I mean, you have to be. I don't even think you have to be. It depends on what you would consider to be fluent. I think you have to be. I think your comprehension has to be pretty high. I think, for one, but after being here for 5 years, it should be. It should be. And if it's not after 5 years, I mean that's telling in itself, isn't it? But language is language. You're always going to have to keep learning, right? Just like anything, lifelong learning. But there are tons of benefits to it. I mean, I can go on about them, but how much do you want to be a part of your community? I mean, this is not about, we're not talking about getting jobs or anything. We're talking about living in a community, which is basically the foundation of your life, isn't it? Where you live, right? So I think that's really important, especially if you want to stay in one place and not be moving around. If you're a move around type person, maybe you can take it either way. But I want to sort of settle down and have stability for my family. But yeah, I mean, things you can do. I mean, you can become a public servant. You can become an adjunct public servant, like a volunteer firefighter, which is one of the things I do. You couldn't do that unless you're a citizen. So, and there's benefits to being that, to doing something like that, being a volunteer firefighter. I'm not going to go into the details of that right now, but there's benefits to that besides the fact that you're just helping out, putting yourself out there, being a human resource, without expecting so much in return. So yeah, there's definite benefits, and I mean, as I kind of alluded to when I did my video about retiring in Japan, one of the things that I think the COVID-19 pandemic has brought home for me, and I think a lot of people, is that what does it mean to live where you are right now, and how whether you're, especially if you're abroad right now, or abroad, when I say that, I mean you're not in your place of birth. Do you like where you are? And if you do, you realize how important it is to have a certain status, whatever that status is. Permanent residence, a valid visa, or even citizenship. So, in natural disasters, which is really what this is, kind of. I mean, with a pandemic, people often appreciate even more where they are, especially if they're fond of the place, or if there's someplace you'd like to be. You strive even more to want to make it happen. So, and I think that people who are interested in Japan, or who have thought about moving here, I think a lot of people will think more deeply about citizenship, about the concept of citizenship, of trying to take on citizenship in Japan, and I think it's something that more people should try. I understand that, say, between 15 and 20,000 people a year do apply, but that number should probably be double that, or at least, of people who attempt it. I'm not saying it should be something exponentially greater, something along the lines of classic immigrant country, but I'm saying it should be more than what it is just to apply. I'm not talking about approvals. There should be more people applying. Actually, I think it's something like 12 to 15,000 people are naturalized each year. I'm not sure how many people apply, but I don't think the number of applicants is far greater than the number of people approved for naturalization. So I think that number should just be at least double. I'll put it that way. So yeah, I definitely think it's there are no negatives. Well, I mean, I think historically people have always said that, well, the negative is that you have to give up your citizenship from your original country, and that's negative, especially if you like where you're from originally. People want this, people are in love with this idea of dual citizenship. I'm not in love with the idea of dual citizenship. I have no problem giving up U.S. citizenship. I don't think it's really possible to be a citizen of more than one country, especially when you're talking about two countries that are not in any type of union or something. I mean, how can you have allegiance to two places? I mean, it doesn't really make much sense to me, but I understand why people want it, because it exists for some countries. Some countries allow it. When I was growing up in the U.S., it wasn't allowed, but the U.S. changed its policy on that issue. Japan hasn't, and I respect it, because, like I said, when I was growing up in the U.S., that was the way. The U.S. was exactly like Japan as far as the dual citizenship. It wasn't allowed, so I'm totally comfortable. I'm used to that concept. That changed in the U.S. since I've been here. The Philippines too. The Philippines only allowed one citizenship, and in many ways they still do. I mean, they have a sort of dual citizenship, but it really isn't. I mean, because if you, for example, in the Philippines, if you wanted to naturalize, they would not allow you to keep your original passport if you wanted to naturalize the Philippine citizenship. So they allow former Filipinos who have lost their citizenship to basically reacquire their Philippine citizenship they allow that, but they don't allow people who naturalize to keep it. So they have a kind of dual citizenship. Japan doesn't have one at all for people over the age of 22, I believe. And people who naturalize, it's not possible legally. And if you try to keep your other citizenship, if you willfully try to keep it, it's going to cause problems for you. Believe me. But I wholeheartly encourage people who are interested in looking into Japanese citizenship just to go into the office, the regional affairs office in your local city, and just go in for a consultation. That's what I did the first time. You go make that first meeting, and they'll immediately start, trying to assess your Japanese. But just be yourself and tell the truth. That's all you can do. But yeah, so there it is, naturalization in a nutshell. And if you're gonna do it, just like I said, believe that in what you're doing, you'll have no problems. All right, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends. And be like the wind. Be as fast as the wind. 風のように速く.